The afternoon rain had turned the small Vermont town quiet. The streets shimmered with water, and the trees outside Amelia's window swayed gently in the cold wind. Inside her cozy home, the smell of brewed coffee filled the kitchen. Amelia stood by the counter, her hands wrapped around a mug that had gone cold long ago. Her eyes were tired, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of too many thoughts. She had spent most of the morning cleaning, folding laundry, and trying to keep herself busy. Anything to avoid the silence that seemed louder since Daniel left 2 years ago. Her son, Ethan, had been upstairs in his room for quite a while, humming softly to himself. He was only 10, but sometimes he carried a calmness that reminded her of his father. Amelia had always admired that about Daniel, his steady nature, his quiet strength. But over time, their marriage had begun to break under the strain of long work hours, missed conversations, and words that should have been spoken but never were. When Daniel moved out, Amelia promised herself she would stay strong for Ethan, even if her heart ached every time she saw the empty space at the dinner table. The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the window in a rhythm that almost matched her thoughts. She finally sighed and set her cup down. She had bills to check, dinner to plan, and 1,000 little things to do yet. She couldn't bring herself to move. Then came the voice from upstairs. Sharp, frustrated, and filled with the kind of urgency that only a child could have. "Hurry up, Mum. I can't stand on it anymore." Amelia blinked in surprise. The sound of Ethan's voice pulled her out of her thoughts instantly. She rushed toward the stairs, her slippers making soft thuds on the wooden floor. "What's going on, sweetheart?" she called as she climbed up. When she reached his room, she stopped for a moment, catching her breath. Ethan was standing on a small wooden stool near the wall, holding a photo frame that looked too big for him. His little arms shook under its weight. "Ethan," she said quickly, walking over. "You could forgive me that." He turned his head and smiled, a mix of pride and guilt crossing his face. "I wanted to hang it myself, Mom. I thought it would make you happy." Amelia gently took the frame from his hands and stepped onto the stool instead. She hung it carefully on the nail he had already placed. The frame contained a picture from years ago, a bright summer afternoon at the park. Daniel's arm was around her shoulders. Ethan was sitting on his. The sunlight in that photo seemed almost unreal now, as if it belonged to another life. "There," she said softly, stepping down and brushing the dust from her hands. "Looks perfect." Ethan's eyes sparkled. "Do you think Dad will like it?" The question caught her off guard. She turned to him, unsure how to answer. "I'm sure he would," she finally said, keeping her tone calm. "It's a nice memory." Ethan nodded, satisfied, and went to pick up his crayons from the floor. Amelia stood for a moment longer, staring at the photo. The laughter captured in it felt distant but familiar. Daniel's smile had always been easy, genuine, the kind that could calm her on her worst days. She missed that more than she cared to admit. "Mom?" Ethan's voice broke her thoughts again. "Can we have pancakes for dinner? Like when Dad used to make them." She smiled faintly. "Pancakes for dinner, huh? I guess we could do that." Ethan grinned, already racing toward the stairs. "You're the best!" he shouted. Amelia followed him down, shaking her head with a soft laugh. As she reached the bottom of the stairs, she caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. Her face looked calm, but her eyes told a different story. One of quiet loneliness and the kind of hope that refuses to die. She didn't know what the future held, but seeing Ethan so happy reminded her that love still lived here, even if it had changed shape. In the kitchen, she mixed the pancake batter while Ethan sat at the table drawing with his crayons. The air smelled sweet, like vanilla and butter. Every few minutes, he looked up and said something funny, and she laughed, Genuinely, for the first time that day. As the evening light faded, she glanced at the photo again through the doorway. The faces in that frame seemed to watch over them, not hauntingly, but tenderly. Amelia realized that maybe this house wasn't just full of memories. It was full of reminders that life moves on, even after hearts break. When the rain finally stopped, she opened the window a little and let the cool breeze in. The sound of crickets replaced the steady drizzle. She turned off the stove, placed the pancakes on the table, and called out, "Dinner's ready." Ethan ran in, laughing, his drawing clutched in his small hand. "Look, Mom. It's us, you, me, and Dad at the park again." Amelia looked at the picture he had drawn. 3 smiling figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. Her throat tightened, and she pulled him into a gentle hug. "Beautiful," she whispered. "Just beautiful." As they ate together, the house no longer felt so empty. The silence had changed. It wasn't loneliness anymore. It was peace, fragile but real. And though Amelia didn't know it yet, this small moment, her son on that stool, the old photo on the wall, would be the beginning of something new. It was the quiet start of a healing she didn't know she still needed. The night came softly over Vermont, spreading a calm silence through Amelia's small house. The rain had stopped hours ago, leaving the streets shiny and quiet. The smell of pancakes still lingered faintly in the kitchen, mixing with the scent of wood from the fireplace. Ethan had fallen asleep early, his sketchbook still open beside him. Amelia tucked him in, brushed a strand of hair from his forehead, and stood there for a moment, watching him breathe. Her heart always softened when she looked at him. He was her reason to stay strong, the anchor that kept her steady when everything else felt uncertain. Downstairs, the living room was dimly lit by the golden flicker of the fire. Amelia sat on the couch with her phone in her hand, scrolling through old pictures, birthdays, school trips, and little moments she used to share with Daniel. It had been months since they last spoke. Their conversations had slowly faded after the divorce, turning from long talks into polite, distant exchanges about Ethan. Still, every time she saw a picture of them together, something inside her stirred, not regret, but a quiet ache for what once was. Her phone suddenly buzzed, lighting up her hand. The name on the screen made her freeze. Daniel. She hesitated before opening it. He rarely texted, and when he did, it was usually about their son. Her heart picked up speed as she read the short message. "Heard Ethan's school won the art contest. I'm proud of him. Tell him I said that." Amelia stared at the message, unsure how to respond. It was simple, polite, but it carried warmth she hadn't felt from him in a long time. She thought about Ethan's drawing of their family, the one he had made just that evening. Maybe Daniel really did miss them more than he said. Taking a slow breath, she typed back, "He'd love to hear that from you. You should tell him yourself." She hit send before she could change her mind. Her heart thudded softly in her chest as she waited. A few seconds later, the little typing dots appeared, then vanished. Appeared again, vanished once more. It was strange how 3 tiny dots could hold so much tension. Then finally, his reply came. "Maybe I will. I've been meaning to stop by. If that's okay." Amelia leaned back on the couch. Her mind suddenly crowded with memories. The sound of his laughter, the way he used to hum while making coffee, the smell of his cologne that still lingered in one of the old coats hanging by the door. Seeing him again felt both right and dangerous. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, but another part, the one that had learned to protect itself, told her to be careful. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she set her phone aside and looked into the fire. The flames danced softly, filling the room with warmth. It reminded her of the nights they used to sit like this together, talking about the future, their dreams, their little plans. Somewhere along the line, they had stopped dreaming together. A few minutes later, her phone buzzed again. "I just want to see him. Maybe bring him a gift. I'll stay out of your way." Amelia smiled faintly at the line, realizing how careful Daniel sounded, like he didn't want to step on old wounds. She typed back, "You don't have to stay out of my way. He'll be happy to see you." Then, after a moment's hesitation, she added, "You can come by Saturday if that works." This time, the dots appeared quickly. "Saturday works. Thank you, Amelia." She locked her phone and exhaled, feeling both lighter and unsettled. The fire crackled softly, and the wind outside brushed against the window. Everything around her felt still, but her heart was racing quietly beneath that calm surface. Amelia got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured herself a cup of tea. Her reflection in the dark window showed a woman trying to be strong, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of hope she hadn't felt in years. She knew seeing Daniel again would open old emotions, not just for her, but for Ethan too. But maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Maybe it was time for closure, or a new beginning. She sat at the table, remembering the way Daniel used to draw silly doodles on napkins during breakfast. Ethan had that same habit now, sketching faces and shapes on every scrap of paper he could find. Some habits, it seemed, ran deeper than blood. They ran through memories. Amelia looked around the quiet house. It still carried pieces of Daniel. The bookshelf he built. The clock he fixed. The garden he used to water every morning. She had tried to move on, but the truth was, she never really stopped caring. She just learned how to hide it behind everyday routines. Her phone buzzed once more. This time it was just a single message. "Tell Ethan I love him." She read it twice, then smiled softly. "I will," she whispered to herself, setting the phone down beside her tea. The night grew colder outside, but inside, something gentle began to warm her again. Not love, not yet, but a quiet reminder of how love once felt. She looked at the photo on the wall, the same one Ethan had insisted on hanging earlier. The faces in that frame seemed to shine a little brighter tonight. As she turned off the lights and climbed the stairs, Amelia felt a strange calm. Maybe Saturday would bring nothing more than polite conversation. Or maybe it would remind them both that time doesn't erase every feeling. Some simply sleep, waiting for the right moment to wake. Before heading to bed, she peeked into Ethan's room one last time. He was sleeping peacefully, clutching his sketchbook. She brushed a kiss on his forehead and whispered, "Daddy's coming to see you, sweetheart." For the first time in a long while, Amelia went to sleep with a quiet smile. Outside, the clouds cleared and the moonlight slipped through the window. Soft, pale, and full of promise. Saturday morning arrived with clear skies and sunlight streaming through the windows. The air smelled like coffee and maple syrup. Amelia woke up earlier than usual, her heart fluttering with quiet nerves. Today, Daniel was coming over. It had been months since they last saw each other face to face. She stood in front of the mirror, fixing her hair for the third time, telling herself it didn't matter, but deep down, she knew it did. Some part of her still wanted to look like the woman he used to love. Downstairs, Ethan was already buzzing with excitement. He had cleaned his room, laid out his favorite toy cars, and even asked if they could make chocolate chip pancakes again. Amelia smiled at his energy. She didn't want to dampen his happiness with her own anxiety. "Of course," she said, ruffling his hair. "Let's make this a good day." The hours moved quickly. Amelia kept herself busy, wiping the counters, checking the oven, and pretending she wasn't watching the clock every few minutes. By noon, The table was set with fresh pancakes, orange juice, and a nervous silence that filled the space between them. Then, the doorbell rang. Ethan jumped up before she could move. "Dad's here," he shouted, running to open the door. Amelia followed slowly, her breath catching for a moment. And there he was, Daniel, standing at the door with a gentle smile. He looked older, calmer, and a little tired, but his eyes were the same, kind, steady, and warm. He was holding a small box wrapped in bright paper. "Hey, champ," he said, kneeling down as Ethan ran into his arms. Amelia stood by the doorway, quietly watching them. There was something almost surreal about seeing them together again. For months, she had tried to get used to the empty spaces. But now, seeing Daniel there filled the house with a feeling she hadn't felt in a long time. Completeness. "Hi," Daniel said softly when he finally looked up at her. "Hi," she replied, her voice steady though her heart raced. He handed Ethan the box. "Got you something. Thought you might like it." Ethan tore it open immediately, revealing a set of paintbrushes and watercolor paints. His eyes lit up. "Dad, these are just like the ones my art teacher has." Daniel smiled. "I figured you'd make good use of them." Amelia motioned for them to come inside. "Lunch is ready," she said. "Pancakes as requested." They sat together at the table, the air filled with soft laughter and the clinking of plates. Ethan did most of the talking, about school, his art contest, his new friends. Daniel listened intently, laughing at his jokes, asking questions, and smiling in that familiar way that once melted every wall around Amelia's heart. She caught herself looking at him more than once. The way he smiled hadn't changed. The way he listened, really listened, hadn't either. After lunch, Ethan ran outside to play, leaving them alone in the kitchen. The silence between them was gentle, not awkward. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, watching Amelia clear the plates. "You've done an amazing job with him," he said quietly. She glanced over her shoulder. "He's a good kid. He makes it easy." Daniel smiled faintly. "Still, you've been holding everything together on your own." "I know that wasn't easy." She shrugged. "We manage." There was a small pause. "I miss this place," he said. The smell of coffee, the sound of him running around. "You." Amelia froze for a second, her hand still on the sink. The way he said it, softly, honestly, stirred something deep inside her. But she didn't turn around. "You chose to leave, Daniel," she said quietly. He sighed. "I know. I thought I was doing the right thing at the time. I thought giving you space would fix things. But all it did was make me realize how much I lost." She finally turned to face him. His eyes were full of sincerity, and for a moment, she saw the man she fell in love with all those years ago. The one who made her laugh during stormy nights, who held her hand when the world felt too heavy. "People change," she said, her voice soft. "Maybe," he replied. "But I don't think my feelings ever did." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock and Ethan's laughter from outside. Amelia wanted to say something, but words failed her. So she simply nodded and began drying the dishes, her hands trembling slightly. Daniel took a step closer, his voice low. "I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I never stopped caring. Not for a single day." Her throat tightened. "Daniel, please." "Not now." He nodded, respecting her boundary. "Okay," he said quietly. "But maybe one day, we can talk about it." He turned to leave, but before he stepped out, Ethan came running back in, holding a bunch of yellow leaves. "Dad, look! I made us a family bouquet." Daniel laughed and took the leaves from him. Amelia smiled. unable to hide the warmth in her eyes. It was such an innocent moment, yet it carried a weight she couldn't ignore. As Daniel said goodbye at the door, Ethan hugged him tightly. "Come again soon, Dad." Daniel looked at Amelia. She met his gaze and nodded. "Maybe next week," she said softly. When the door closed behind him, Amelia stood still for a long moment. The house felt different now. Not empty, not heavy. Just alive. She walked to the living room and looked at the photo hanging on the wall. The family picture, the one Ethan had struggled to hang, seemed to mean something new now. It wasn't a memory anymore. It was a reminder that love doesn't always end. Sometimes it just waits for another chance. Amelia smiled faintly, whispering to herself, "Maybe some stories aren't over yet." Outside, the wind carried the faint laughter of a child and the promise of something, healing, something real, waiting to return. The week after Daniel's visit moved faster than Amelia expected. The house felt lighter somehow, like it had been holding its breath and finally exhaled. Ethan talked non-stop about his dad, how funny he was, how he promised to come back next weekend, and how they'd go to the park together. Every time he mentioned Daniel's name, Amelia felt a small flutter in her chest. It wasn't the same as before. It wasn't pain. It was something gentler, something she didn't dare name yet. Saturday arrived again, bright and warm, with a soft breeze carrying the scent of pine. Amelia woke up early to the sound of Ethan's laughter downstairs. He was already dressed, his hair still messy, his backpack packed with snacks and a soccer ball. "Mom, Dad's coming soon," he called out excitedly. Amelia smiled from the top of the stairs. "I know, sweetheart. Breakfast first." She made pancakes again, the way Ethan liked them, with chocolate chips in the shape of a smile. It had become their quiet little tradition. As she flipped the pancakes, her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Leaving now. Can't wait to see you both." Her heart did that little skip again. She looked out the window at the golden leaves drifting across the lawn, and thought about how much had changed in just 1 week. The silence between them had turned into conversations again. Late-night texts about Ethan had become friendly exchanges. Small jokes, shared memories, a few words of comfort. It felt easy, natural, almost like the old days. But softer, wiser. An hour later, Daniel's car pulled into the driveway. Ethan ran outside before the engine even stopped, shouting, "Dad! Dad! Let's go!" Daniel laughed as he stepped out, scooping his son into a hug. Amelia stood by the doorway, watching them with a calm smile. Daniel looked up and met her eyes. "Hey," he said warmly. "Hey," she replied. No awkwardness this time. Just a quiet understanding. They all drove to the park together. The same one from the photo on the wall. The trees were painted in shades of gold and orange, and the lake sparkled under the sun. Ethan ran ahead with his soccer ball while Amelia and Daniel walked slowly behind him, their footsteps crunching against fallen leaves. "Feels strange being back here," Daniel said. "Good strange." Amelia nodded. "We used to come here every Sunday," she said softly. "Ethan was so little back then." He smiled. "You used to pack sandwiches and lemonade. He always ended up spilling half of it." They both laughed, and for a brief second, the years between them disappeared. It was just the two of them again. Before the fights, before the distance. The memory felt both comforting and bittersweet. When Ethan ran back to show them a funny-shaped leaf, Daniel crouched down beside him, laughing along. Amelia watched them, her heart full and heavy at the same time. She hadn't realized how much Ethan had missed this. A father's laugh, a hand on his shoulder, that sense of family. Maybe she had missed it too. After lunch at the park, they sat by the lake watching the ducks. The air was cool, but the sunlight felt warm on their faces. Daniel looked at her quietly for a moment. "Thank you for letting me come back," he said. She turned to him. "It's not about letting you," she replied softly. "You're his father. You always have a place here." He nodded slowly. "I know, but I also mean, thank you for not shutting me out completely." Amelia looked at the water, her voice calm. "I wanted to. For a long time I did. But I realized holding onto anger doesn't fix anything. It just keeps you stuck." Daniel took a deep breath. "I made mistakes, Amelia. I should have fought harder for us." She looked at him then, her eyes kind but steady. "Maybe we both should have." They sat in silence for a while, watching Ethan toss crumbs into the water. There was no rush, no pressure, just a shared peace that hadn't existed between them in years. Later that evening, back home, Ethan insisted on hanging another drawing on the wall. This one, a picture of the three of them holding hands under a rainbow. He climbed up on the same small stool, stretching as high as he could. "Mum, hurry up! I can't stand on it anymore," he shouted. Amelia laughed and rushed over. Okay, I've got it." She took the drawing from his hands and pinned it perfectly next to the old family photo. When she turned around, Daniel was standing in the doorway, smiling softly. "That's a good spot," he said. Amelia nodded. "Yeah, feels right." Ethan grinned proudly. "Now we have two pictures, one old, one new. Like before and after." They both laughed at his words, but Amelia couldn't help feeling the truth in them. The before and after, that's what life was. Pieces of the past stitched together with hope for what's next. When Ethan went to bed that night, Daniel lingered by the door, unsure whether to leave or stay. "He's happy," he said finally. "I haven't seen him this happy in a long time." Amelia smiled faintly. "He missed you." Daniel nodded, his voice low. "I missed both of you." The silence stretched for a moment, soft and meaningful. Then Amelia said quietly, "You don't have to stay away anymore, Daniel. We've all been through enough." His eyes met hers, full of gratitude and something deeper, something that didn't need words. "Thank you," he whispered. As he turned to go, she added, "Next week we're making pancakes again. You should join us." He paused, a slow smile spreading across his face. "I'd like that." When the door closed behind him, Amelia stood for a moment, looking at the two pictures on the wall, the past and the present, side by side. For the first time in years, she felt peace instead of longing. Outside, the autumn wind carried a soft whisper through the trees. Inside, the house felt alive again, filled with warmth, laughter, and the quiet promise of love finding its way back home. And in that calm, glowing silence, Amelia finally understood. Sometimes love doesn't return the same way it left. Sometimes it comes back softer, wiser, and ready to begin again.